she was close to her family. She was close to her father, close to her sisters and her brother, her youngest brother. That it just didn't seem like a high probability that she would run away and start a new life.
And also her mother was sick. We forgot to mention that. Her mom was sick.
Yes. Yeah, she hadn't been fully diagnosed at the time with cancer, but I think she was beginning to get sick at that point in time. She passed away a couple years in 2009.
2009, on Maura's birthday.
On Maura's birthday.
It's really tragic. But again, what do you think happened? Like, after all of this, have anybody or anyone figured this out? So I know that we're going to see a lot of this.
Yeah,
so tell
so
me what you can.
we can't really say what we come to because, you know, after
all
of these
and I have
episodes.
to ask.
Exactly. You have to try.
You have to try to ask. What happened? How does it end?
After all these episodes, you know, we go through every theory, and like Art said, we talk to so many experts, and like we get some really surprising interviews with law enforcement, and really we take all the information and sit down with it and say what is the most likely scenario that happened, knowing everything we know from this year of investigating, and we come to a conclusion, which you will have to watch, and
we get to see that on
you get to see it, and you can come to that conclusion with us and look at the same evidence and say, you know what, I don't agree with them.
Good.
We put it all out there.
So what you're saying to me is, by the time I invest 6 episodes in something that I find so fascinating, you're not going to leave me hanging at the end. You're going to have some sort of really rationalized, educated theory as to what has happened to her. Most and people who watch it can either agree or disagree. That's
right. And what we're hoping is the show will, get somebody out there to say, you know, I bumped into her in a gas station 13 years ago. Let me call them and let them know this information.
Speaking of that, there have been sightings of her.
Yes.
The author Renner has actually talked to people who claimed that they've seen her after disappearance. How credible is that?
We talk to those same people, and you can see those interviews.
Yeah, I think, the problem, having done this for a lot of years, the problem with eyewitness statements or you have to corroborate them with other bits of information. I mean, I used to do shows on America's Most Wanted, and somebody would say, oh, I saw him in a 7-Eleven. There's no actionable lead there. There's nothing you can do about it. You can show him pictures all day long. He actually showed a single picture.
Yeah.
You don't do that. I mean,
And he showed an old photo
right.
of her right before she went missing, a young 21-year-old girl, when at the time she's closer to 30.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't look the same now as when I did when I was 21.
Yeah.
So that was a problem.
And
yeah,
also,
99% of those, I saw them in the 7-Elevens turn out to be nothing. Now, if you get 3 of them like that, there's something going on here.
Well, also, I got to see in the first episode or the second that him actually asking a clerk somewhere.
Yeah.
And I was watching this clerk thinking to myself, you know that whole thing about the power of suggestion? You know, it felt a lot like that. Like when you have 3 people in a room and you say, hey, does this smell like strawberries? And 2 of them say yes. That third person may not think it smells like strawberries, but she's going to say that it does.
Well, and you're hitting on something huge because he didn't walk in with a lineup. He walked in with one picture of a girl. And Maura's a very pretty girl, but she's also, she doesn't really stand out either. She's
a very pretty girl, but she looks like any college student on any campus.
She looks like a very average, pretty girl, and that's not mean. I'm not saying anything mean about her.
It's the truth.
But she doesn't have these, crazy distinguishing features about her.
She's
so
very all-American, and that's the truth, and that's what I thought when he was showing her this photo. It could be anyone.
Hair
she
in a
looks like
bun.
people that I had in my sorority,
Right.
And after all these years, you sometimes don't, especially a clerk saying, and the way the clerk answered the question wasn't that convincing.
Right, and that's what's interesting paired with what Renner tells us. Renner says, I walk in and she says, yeah, absolutely. She doesn't say yes, absolutely. She says, yeah, I think I saw her.
I appreciate that you said that because I noticed that. You have a video of him asking the clerk. The clerk hesitates, looks down at the picture, pauses, and is like, yeah, but it's like a kind of thing. When Renner's telling you the story, it's like, she absolutely said she saw her 3 weeks ago. I'm like, no, she didn't. So that storytelling aspect is a little bit, it changes. It wasn't quite as insistent as he said.
Right. And here's the thing too, it always comes off as like this renter bashing, but at the same time there are people that do disappear for years, decades, and turn up. I mean, very recently there was a woman in Texas who turned up after 40 years.
Right.
She had left her family in the north somewhere, Michigan, somewhere like that. Shows up in Texas recently, 2016. She'd been gone for 40 years.
Did she show up on her own, or did somebody find her?
Someone found her. They had been looking for her. And they finally traced it to like an alternate identity and found out she's right there. She just left.
And not to bash anybody, but one of the things that Renner says is, if you find her, which you will, because she's still alive, don't tell anybody, because then her family can get to her. And I thought, what is that called when people have a hypothesis and just want to make sure that all evidence points towards that?
Yeah.
You know?
Didn't you say that in one of the episodes?
You did.
We have to make sure he's not fitting things in
into his narrative.
Yeah, because having been in, I remember when I was going through school in my residency, there was this one doctor that we were all in our training together, and if he was convinced that this was the disease, no matter what he found, he would make sure it fit into the diagnosis.
Yeah.
When oftentimes that wasn't what it was at all.
Yeah.
He would find the pieces that made it fit. So I felt a lot of that was happening with it.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
With it. Yeah.
Why show this now after all this years? What's the interest with this case for you guys? Why did you both get him? Like, I know a little bit why you got involved, Maggie, but after 40 years in law enforcement.
Yeah. There's a couple reasons. Number one, I'm a father. I have 3 daughters that are right around the same age Maura would be today. But also, Fred is from Massachusetts. I'm from Massachusetts. He works in Cape Cod. I'm from Cape Cod. I've actually bumped into him a couple times on the street. So there's a connection between us geographically.
And emotionally, that counts.
Yes, yeah, and I've spent enough time with Fred and his family now that we do have a connection, which is unusual for me because I've never had to have a connection before to when you're looking for fugitives. It's a completely different line of work. So it is different from that perspective, but I think it also makes the family trust me, trust Maggie, and we've had several conversations with them about we just want to get the facts of this case, and it's worked out well. They have trusted us. They have shared a lot of information with us.
A lot of information.
So you think you guys both were able to do this in a way that maintains the respect for Maura, for her family, for law enforcement? Did you feel like that was
I think we tried to bring back respect. I wouldn't even say maintain, because I think it got to a point where it was so out of control. I think we tried to bring back respect to all groups involved and really, again, take it from like a baseline.
How was it out of control? Can you describe how it was so out